All right, so good morning, good afternoon, and good morning to all of you. My discussion is all about stocks and their valuations. So ano po bang ibig sabihin? Pag sinasabi natin stocks valuations or the features of your common stocks. I will discuss later also about the intrinsic value. And also about determining about the stock value. I will also discuss about some of the features also of your common stocks. So importante yan. And also about your preferred stocks. Okay. So meaning to say, ano po bang ibig sabihin nito? No? But before that, uh, first thing is ano ba yung facts about your common stocks? Ano po ba yung mga rights of a common stocks? Okay, number one class, please take note, apat lang yan class ha, apat lang. There are four rights, of a common stocks or ordinary shares. Number one, right to be elected, in the board of directors. Number two, right right to vote, And number three, preemptive right to purchase additional shares. And pinakahuli, right to share or right to receive dividends. Again, ano yan? Apat lang yan, ha? So you have your right to be elected in the board of directors, right to vote, preemptive right or right to purchase additional shares, and the last one is your right to receive dividends. So to have this facts about your common stocks, number one, it represents yes it represents the ownership. Okay, so very important class that in terms of your um, common stocks, or ordinary shares, it represents ownership. And number two class, please take note, it also have ownership implies control. Okay, so very important class that in terms of this is you control, so ibig sabihin you have control, and stockholders at the same time to elect directors, di ba? Ito yung sabi ko kanina. Ano yan? Right to be elected in the board of directors. Okay? And pinakahuli class, management goal again is to maximize the stock's price. O class ha, please take note, yan yung pinaka-goal natin, to be part, or to be elected, or to be part of maximization of your resources. Okay, that's one facts about your common stocks. Okay. Kasi class, may mga time, uh, yung mga part of your common stocks or ordinary shares. By the way, baka baguhin yung ano ha, baka baguhin, no? It is also known as your ordinary shares, no? Okay? It is also known as the ordinary shares. Okay. So, intrinsic value, yan. Ito yung usual na tanong, no? Ano po bang ibig sabihin ng intrinsic value? In layman's term, ito po ay the true value. Ito po yung value ng stocks. Kasi class, iba yung value na uh, nasa public or na nasa public issuance, no? Anong tawag doon? The IPO or the initial public offering. Iba po 'yon compared with some of the intrinsic value. Okay? So, meaning to say, outside investors, corporate insiders, and analysts use variety of approaches to estimate again yung ating stock's intrinsic value. Okay. So, in equilibrium, we assume that the stock price equals its intrinsic value. Class, yan po ang uh, uh, pinaka conditions, wherein the stock price equals the intrinsic value. So, outsiders estimate intrinsic value is to help determine which stocks are attractive to buy, or stocks with a price below or above its intrinsic value are undervalued and overvalued. Sige, tanungin ko kayo, Pag yan, intrinsic value is the true value. For example, 50 pesos is the intrinsic value. That's the true value. Pero sa market, yan ay 60 pesos. Ibig sabihin, overvalued yan. Bibili ka ba? Siyempre hindi. No? If the intrinsic value naman is lower than the market, of course, parang hindi siya attractive. Pero if the intrinsic value is more than the market, halimbawa, intrinsic value mo ay 100, pero sa market ay only 50, bibilin mo ba yan? Yes, they're undervalued. Again, intrinsic value is the true value. It is the value of your stocks. Again, kanina ang sabi, ang goal natin class ay management's goal is to maximize the stock price. Okay. Before that, no, ito yung ating determinants of the intrinsic value. How do we determine your intrinsic value? Sabi niya, number one, managerial actions and economic environment and the political climate. No? So, dyan, specifically the true value. If you notice last, unang-una, the true investors' cash flows and the true risk. Nasa left side. Ano yan? The stock's intrinsic value versus the perceived investor's cash flow and the perceived risk. Ano naman yan? Okay? Yan naman yung ating stocks market price. Okay. So, meaning to say, no, as part of this, no, is that part of your stocks market price, no, yan po ay uh, kino-compare natin. Okay? Particularly for the stock intrinsic value. Okay? And also we have the stock market price. So, ano kas ang maganda dyan? Ang maganda dyan is the intrinsic value. And the intrinsic value, mas maganda, mas maliit siya compared with the stock market price na nakikita nyo lagi. Okay. So, with this class, there would be, as a basic rule, please take note na nasa pinakahuli, no? That the market equilibrium, the intrinsic value, dapat ay kaparehas ng stock price. That's the basic rule. Pero, hindi po yan nangyayari. May mga time, mas malaki pa ang market value sa intrinsic value. Mas malaki pa ang intrinsic value sa sa stock price. Depende. Okay, sige. So, meaning to say, no, what are the different approaches to estimating the intrinsic value? So, ito yung mga approaches on how you will be able to estimate the intrinsic value. So, we will do it one by one, no? Number one, yung tinatawag nating discounted model. So, ano po ba yung discounted model? Okay? And also, we have what you called corporate valuation model. So, we will do it one by one, ha? Okay? Then, we have the PE, price and earnings ratio. Okay? And the last one is the EVA. Anong EVA? Economic value added. Okay? The economic value added. Okay. Sige, one by one tayo. We go first with our discounted dividend model. So, ano po bang ibig sabihin ng dividend or discounted model? Class, hopefully, alam nyo to kung bakit ganun yung formula niya. The value of the stocks, that present value of the future dividends expected to be generated by the stocks. Bakit ganun po yung formula? Go to my video, no, about this, no, about the discounted and the compounded, no. So ito yung formula. P0 is equals to D1 divided by 1 plus RS plus D2 divided by 1 plus RS2 plus D3 divided by 1 plus RS3 plus, of course, you have D1 plus RS. So, ibig sabihin, class, ito yung formula natin para makompute natin yung ating present value. Okay? That's the formula in computing for the present value. Okay? Bakit? Di ba saan galing yung discounting, no? Of course, kabaliktaran ng ating compounding. Wherein the compounding is you have the interest is equals to PRT. Ibig sabihin, the number to be multiplied by 1 plus R. Ito class ay divided by kasi kabaliktaran ito ng ating compounding. Okay, sige. So with this class, please take note of the constant growth stocks. Ibig sabihin, the stock whose dividends are expected to grow forever at a constant rate of G. Ano yung G? Is the growth rate. That's why in D1, ito yung kanina, ito yung compounding natin, wherein the D0 to be multiplied by 1 plus G raised to the 1. Ibig sabihin, yung dividend today mo, yung D0, to be multiplied by 1 plus G. Ano po yung G growth rate? Bakit 1 after a year? Then, dito naman, D0 to be multiplied by 1 plus G raised to the 2. Bakit po 2? After 2 years. And dt, no? So kung ilang taon man yan, so you have d0 to be multiplied by 1 plus g, you have kung ilang taon man yan. If g is constant, no? The discounted dividend formula converges to this. P0 is equals to D0 to be multiplied by 1 plus G divided by RS. Okay, so return to minus G. Therefore, in computing for the intrinsic value, the formula is D1 already. Why D1? D0 to be multiplied by 1 plus G, no? Divided by RS, no? Minus G. That's the formula, no? So RS minus growth rate. Okay. So that's the formula, class, now particularly for your constant growth stocks. That's why, class, no, in computing for the future dividends, if you notice, dt is equals to d0 to be multiplied by 1 plus g, no, raised to the 2. And we have PVD, no? So, ibig sabihin, the present value of your dividends. That's why, class, sabi ko kanina, ang formula niya ay D0 or D1, D2, D depende, no? For the date, divided by 1 plus R. Kasi nga, kabaliktaran niya ng ating present value. What we will do is, we divide. That's why, class, in terms of the P0 is equals to summation of PVD to 1. Okay? I have sample there, don't worry. No? What happens if the growth rate is greater than your return? Okay? If the return on stocks, if the growth rate is greater than the return, the constant growth formula leads to a negative stock price. Bakit? Eh, mas malaki pa yung growth mo sa return. Dapat mas malaki dapat ang return mo. Okay? Yan. So with this, there would be or it will leads to a negative stock price, which does not make sense, no? The constant growth model can only be used if the RS or the return should be greater than your growth rate. And the G is expected to be consistent forever. As a basic rule, dapat yung return mo ang mas malaki sa ating growth rate. Common sense, 'di ba? Kasi yung return mo, yun yung makukuha mo compared sa growth sa kabuuhan. Okay? As a basic rule. Okay. So with this, use SML. Ano yung SML? Class. Security Market Line. And that would be the Capital Asset Pricing Model. Use the SML to calculate for the required rate of return, the RS, no? So RF, risk-free rate is 7%, and the market return is 12%, and the beta is 1.2. Ano yung beta? Beta, it measures your risk. Okay, so what is the required rate of return in the firm stocks? So if you have your RS is equals to RF, risk-free rate, plus your market return minus your risk-free rate uh, to be multiplied by beta. So 7% plus your 12% minus 7%, and you have 1.2. Magkano po ba ang ating rate of return? 13%. So we will use the 13% now as your return based on your beta. Okay. Ito na. Find the expected dividend stream for the next 3 years and their future values. If this zero, dividend zero, is 2 and the growth is a constant of 6%. Ibig sabihin, 0, 1, 2, 3. Growth rate is 6%. Now, if your 2 pesos, paano nangyari yung 2.12? No? Gawin nyo ay 2 to be multiplied by 1.06. Try nyo nga. 2 to be multiplied by 1.06. Tama ba? Na yan po ba ay 2.12? Sige. 2 to be multiplied by 1.06. Tama ba? Yes. Bakit po 1.06? Kasi 6%. Or pwede naman ganito. 2% times 6% times 12 over 12 plus 2. Sigurado, yan ay 2.12. Saan nagaling yung 2.247? 2 to be multiplied by 1.06 raised to the 2. Meaning to say, the 1.0 the 1.06 is to be multiplied by itself and to be multiplied by 2. And that would be 2.247. Or pwede naman, gawin mo ay 2.12 times 6% times 12 over 12 plus 2.12, 2.247 yan. And the 2.382 is to have 2 to be multiplied by 1.06 raised to the 3. 3 times 1.06 is multiplied by itself to be multiplied by 2. Or 2.247 times 6%, okay, times 12 over 12 plus 2.247, sigurado yan ay 2.382. Okay? Saan nanggaling yung 1.8761? Yan na po yung ating pag-compute ng ating present value. Ibig sabihin, 2.12 divided by 1.0, 1.13. 2.12 divided by 1.13. So you have here 1.8761. Okay? 2.247, saan galing yan? 2.247 divided by 1.13 raised to the 2. Kanina ginawa natin ay we multiply. Pabalik po tayo. We divide 1.7599. We have also here 2.382 divided by 1.06 1.13 raised to the 3. Ibig sabihin, ang present value mo ng 2.382 ay only 16509. Okay? Hopefully, you, nagigets ito, no? Or go to my video about compounding and discounting. Okay. Para maintindihan, class, no, ito yung pag-compute natin ng constant growth model. Meaning to say, if the P0, it is the intrinsic value, ha? D1 divided by return, kanina we compute for 13% minus G. Ibig sabihin, 2.12. Saan po galing yung 2.12? Diba dito yan? The 2.12, yung kanina, ito, raised to 1. So you have your 2.12. Then you have here 2.12 divided by 13%, then minus 6%. 2.12 divided by 0.07, ibig sabihin, you have 30.29 as your intrinsic value. Tandaan ha, the intrinsic value is 30.29. Okay, so what is the stock's expected value 1 year from now? If the DT or D1 will have been paid or will have been paid out already, so expected P1 intrinsic value, the present value as year 1 of D2, D3, and D4, etc. P1 is equals to dito, di ba? Saan galing yung 2.247? Dito pa rin, yung year 2 na. Yan, 2.247 in year 2. Ganon pa rin yung formula. Divided by 0.16 minus 0.06. Magkano yung intrinsic value niya after 2 years? 32.10. Or, you can also find this as P1 as P1 is equals to P0 to be multiplied by 1.06 is equals to 32.10. Ibig sabihin, class, as time goes by, nagbabago po ang ating intrinsic value. Okay. Ito, class. Find the expected yield, capital gains yield, and total return during your first year. Dividend yield, class, the formula ay D1, dividend 1, divided by P0. Ano yung P0? Intrinsic value today is equals to 2.12 divided by 30.29, and we have 7%. And we have also here capital gains yield, which is P1 minus P0 divided by P0. Ibig sabihin, the capital gains yield, ang formula niya ay 32.10 minus 30.29 divided by 30.29. Magkano ang capital gains yield? 6%. Ano yung formula, class? Intrinsic value after year 1 minus intrinsic value today divided by today, no? And how about total return? Dividend yield plus capital gains yield. So, di ba, dividend yield mo kanina 7, yung sa taas, plus 6% as capital gain. You have your total return. of 13%. Eh, di ba kanina, we compute for 13%. Okay, sige. What would the expected price today be if the growth rate will become zero? Ano mangyayari? The dividend stream would be perpetuity. No? Ibig sabihin, yung 2 mo ay constant after year 1, year 2, and year 3. And with this, you can compute using the formula. Ano yung PMT? The payment, you have 2 divided by 0.13. Since wala tayong growth rate, 0, magkano ang intrinsic value na? 15.38. 15.38. And that would be your intrinsic value. Alright. So, what if naman supernatural growth? What if zero? What if G is 30% for 3 years before achieving long run growth of 6%? Okay, can no longer use just the constant growth rate to find the stock price. However, the growth become constant after your 3 years. I think I have sample here. Ito yan, sample natin. Ay, ito ba yan? Sorry, ito. So, valuing with a non-constant growth. Tama ba? Ito ba yan? Yes, tama. Okay. So, ito yung formula natin, no? So, 2 pesos pa rin or $2. In year 1, you have 2.6. Saan po galing yung 2.6? 2 to be multiplied by 1.30. 2 to be multiplied by 1.30. Tama ba na 2.6? Yes. Saan po galing yung 3.36, 3.380? 2 to be multiplied by 1.30 raised to the 2. Ibig sabihin, 1.30 times 1.30 times 2. Or 2.6 to be multiplied by 30% times 12 over 12 plus 2.6, you have 3.380. And year 3, ganun din. 2 to be multiplied by 1.30 raised to the 3. Okay. So, 2.6, 3.380, and 4.394. Okay? So, class, tandaan to ha. So, you have here 4.394. Sorry, mali pala ako. In year 1, the growth rate is only 30 and 30. In year 3, 6% na lang, no? So, ibig sabihin, 3.380. Okay, so try nyo nga, 3.380 to be multiplied by 1.06. Tama ba? Okay, sorry, 3.380. Okay, so you have your 4.394. Okay, so ibig sabihin, class, the 3.380, wait ang class ha, times 1.30. Okay, times 0.30 times 12 over 12. Okay, wait ang class. So you have this one. So you have 1.014. Okay? So type plus 3.380. So tama, 4.394. Sorry, mali pala ako. So ganyan pa rin, 30% in year 1, 30% in year 2, and 3%. So again, para nakuha yung 4.394, 3.380, okay, 3.380 to be multiplied by 0.30 times 12 over 12. So malamang 1014 yan. O, add mo lang yung 3.380 plus 3.380, 4.394. Or, gawin nyo ganito. 2 to be multiplied by 1.30 raised to the 3. And for sure, you have 4.394. Okay. So, class, gawin nyo ulit. Computing for the present value. Saan pa nagaling yung 2.301? 2.6 divided by 1.13. Kasi 13% is the return. Okay? So, 3.380 divided by 1.13 raised to the 2. 2.647. 4.394 divided by 1.13 raised to the 3. And you have 3.3045. Saan po nagaling yung 46558? So, 4.394, gawin nyo ha, 4.394 to be multiplied by 1.06. Tama ba na 4 points? Tama. Okay? Ibig sabihin, to compute for the intrinsic value, 4.658 divided by RS, di ba? Ano yung return? 13% minus 6%. Ano yung 6%? Your return, no? Sorry, your growth rate, no? Because the growth rate is 6% already. So you have 66.54. Okay? So ibig sabihin, we will also do a present value. So 66.54 divided by 1.06. Okay? Divided by 1.06. Okay? Kaya lang ito ay 4 years raised to the 4. That's why class, you have here 46,114. Ano po yung 46,114? That's basically class uh, your present your intrinsic value, no? With a 66.54. Alright, so saan galing yung 46.114? Ibig sabihin, 66.54 divided by 1.13 raised to the 3. Bakit po 1.13 raised to the 3? Kasi nga, nag-start pa lang tayo ng 4 years, no? So, kasi pag 3 years kasi, you have now 6%. So, gawin nyo nga, sige nga. So, ibig sabihin, you have here 1.13 times 1.13 times 1.13. You have 1.442897, no? 1.442897. 1.44697. So, ibig sabihin, 66.54 divided by 1.442697. So, you have here, tama, 46,114. And that would be your intrinsic value. Okay? Bakit po ganun? No? Bakit po hindi po 6%? Kasi nga, kaka-start pa lang natin. And we are referring here to the 3 years. Okay? In computing for the intrinsic value. O class, you add all 2.301 plus 2.647 plus 3.045 plus 46,114, and that would be your intrinsic value total. Magkano? 54,107. Okay. So, another thing, no, for this, find the expected dividend and capital gains yield. So, kanina, no? So, dividend yield for the first year, the formula ay 2.60. So, saan galing 2.60, di ba? Galing po yan doon sa ating first year divided by yung ating 54.1, the intrinsic value total, no? So, ibig sabihin, you have 4.81 as dividend yield. Okay, capital gains naman, you have 13. 13% is your return minus 4.81. Saan po nanggaling yung 4.81, no? Yan yung kanina. Yung kanina, kinumpit natin class as dividend yield. So, you have 8.19. So, with this, during the non-constant growth, dividend yield, and capital gains are not constant. And capital gains yield is not equal to your growth rate. After T3, stock has constant growth and dividend yield will have 7%, while capital gains yield naman at 6%. Another formula. Non-constant growth, what if 0 is growth rate for 3 years? So, ibig sabihin, G0, 0, 0, 0, 0, then you have 2%. Ganun pa rin. D2, 2, 2. D2 divided by 1.13, 1.77. 1.13 raised to the 2. Yes, you have 1.57. Ganun din naman ito. So, ito ay 2 pa rin. So, sa ano galing 1.39? 2 divided by 1.13 raised to the 3. Class, sa galing yung 2.12? 2 to be multiplied by 1.06. Tama ba? Yes, 2.12. So, direct intrinsic value, 2.12 divided by 0.13. Your return minus 6% as your as your growth rate dati, no? Ito, 6%. Sorry, bagong growth rate. So, you have 30.29. So, ganun pa rin class. 1.13 times 1.13 times 1.13. You have 1.44297. So, 30.29 divided by 1.442987. Tama ba na 20.99? Yes. Again, 30.29 divided by 1.442897. Saan po nagaling yung 2.897? 1.13 times 1.13 times 1.13 kasi 3 years siya. Alright? So, ibig sabihin, you have, bakit 3 years? Kasi nga, mag-i-start pa lang tayo sa 4 years, no? So, magkano yan? 1.77 plus 1.57 plus 1.39 plus 20.99. You add all, your intrinsic value is worth 25.72. Same pa rin. We will compute it for the dividend yield for the first year. 2, yung pinakauna, divided by 25.72, which is at your P0 intrinsic value. Magkano yung dividend yield? 7.78. And we have also your capital gains yield for the first year, 13% minus 7.78, and you have 5.22. 13 return minus dividend yield, capital gains yield is your 5.22. So after the T3, the stock has constant growth and a dividend yield of 7%, while capital gains naman will have a 6%. Okay? All right. What if naman if the stocks was expected to have a negative growth, mababa, 6% negative? Would anyone buy the stock, and what is the value? Yes, even though the dividends are declining, the stocks is still producing cash flows and therefore has a positive value. So again, intrinsic value formula, D1 is divided by RS minus G is equals to D0, 1 plus G, your growth, divided by RS minus G. If your 2 to be multiplied by 0.94 kasi may growth rate na negative kaya hindi na siya 100%, no? It is already that 94 divided by 0.13 minus negative 6%. So magkano class yung P0 niya? Intrinsic value 9.89. Okay? Meron pa rin value. Tama kanina. So find the expected annual dividend yield. Capital gains yield is negative 6%. Dividend yield, 13% minus 6%. So, yan ay magiging positive. You have now 19%. Since the stocks is experiencing constant growth, dividend yield and capital gains yield are constant. And therefore, dividend yield is sufficiently large, 19% to offset your negative capital gains. Yan. Okay. We have also here what you call corporate valuation model. So we are done now with the discounted division model. No? So ano yung corporate valuation model? It is also known as free cash flow method. Di ba? Ito yung free cash flow na formula natin. It suggests that the value of the entire firm equals the present value of the firm's free cash flow. Remember, free cash flow is the firm's after-tax return or after-tax operating income less the net capital investment. So, EBIT minus, to be multiplied by 1 minus tax plus debt and amortization. Then we add back depreciation because there's no cash involved minus your capital expenditures, especially about capex plus your net working capital. Okay. Applying the corporate valuation model. So how do we do this one? No? So you have find the market value of the firm by finding the present value of the firm's future cash flows. Subtract the MV of the firm debt and preferred stocks to get the MV of the common stocks. And divide it with the MV of the common stocks by the number of the shares outstanding to get the intrinsic value. Alright. So, issues naman regarding the corporate valuation model. So, there would be disadvantages. Often preferred to the discounted dividend pa din, especially when considering number of the firms that do not pay dividends or when dividends are hard to forecast, no? Or similar to the discounted dividend model, assumes at some point free cash flow will grow at a constant rate. Yeah. That's why you have here what you call horizon value. It represents the value of the firm at the point that growth becomes constant. Okay. So, ano yung horizon value? No? Given that using the corporate valuation model, to find the firm intrinsic value. So, negative 5, okay, 10, 20, no? So, ibig sabihin, nag-increase po tayo. Long run, the free cash flow is 6% and the WACC is 10%. And we have the return of 10. So, negative 5 divided by 1.10 is negative 4,545. 10 divided by 1.10 raised to the 2 is 8264. 20, ganun din, no? So, 20 is you have also 15,056. So, times 20 times 1.06, you have 21.20. Ganun pa rin. With this, the 1.10 times 1.10 times 1.10. Ayan, so you have 21.20 is equals to 0.10 minus same formula with the intrinsic value. So, you have 530. 530 divided by yung 1.10 times 1.10 times 1.10. Ilan yun? Complete natin. So, you have 1.10 times 1.10 kasi 3 years to eh. So, yan ay 1.331. 1.331. 1.331. So, you have 398. Tama. 398, 197. Add mo lahat yan. That would be your intrinsic value. 4169. Sorry, hindi pala intrinsic value. Horizon value. Okay? What is the firm intrinsic value per share? Alright, the firm has 40 million total in debt. Ay, hindi. Ito pala iba na, no? So, we have another approach. The firm has 40 million in debt and preferred stocks of 10 million. And has 10 million shares of preferred stocks. Sorry. 40 million pala, combinations of debt and preference. So, market value of equity, market value of the firm is 41694 minus market value of the debt is 40. Saan po lang yung 416 kanina, no? 416.94 ito. Okay? Yan. So, magkano class yung ating market value of equity? 376.94 million. So, magkano yung value per share? Market value of equity, 376.94. Saan to galing? 376.94 kanina, no? So, yung ating computations, no? Of the market value of equity divided by 10, you have 37.69. So, yan na yung ating value, no, ng ating stocks. Okay? Next one, we have also here firms multiple method. Analysis often use the following multiples to value the stocks using the PE ratio, price earnings ratio, PCF, price to cash flow, price sales, no? Example, based on the comparable firms, we estimate the appropriate P&E or price earnings ratio. Multiply this by expected earnings to back out an estimate of the stock price. Okay. We have also here EVA approach, economic value added, and it is to be computed as equity capital to be multiplied by the ROE minus cost of equity. We're in the market. Value of equity is equals to book value of the equity plus the present value of all futures EVA. And we have also here value per share is equals to market value over equity divided by number of shares. Yan. Okay. Mga formulas na lang yung class. And we have also here the preferred stocks. Ano nga sinasabi sa financial management pag sinasabing preferred stocks, yan daw ay liability. They are hybrid security. Like bonds, preferred stockholders receive fixed dividend and must be paid before dividends are paid out. Sila yung una mong babayaran. No? However, companies can omit preferred dividends payments without fear of pushing the firms into bankruptcy. And with this, no, very important is that if the preferred stocks with an annual dividend of 5 sells for 50, what is the preferred stock return? The value of the preferred is that the dividends divided by your R. Ano yung R? Return on preference. Eh, di ba given na yung value is 50? Then 5 is your dividends. We compute for R, which is the expected return. So, R is equals to 5 divided by 50, and the answer ay 10%. So, I believe this is my last slide. And thank you for watching. And we hope, and I hope that you'll be able that you learn, no, from this example about stock valuations. Bye bye. Thank you.